Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to have a bit of a discussion regarding the end times because this is actually really important for the possible future of Total War Warhammer 3. Because if you might remember, Creative Assembly a long time back actually did say that no end time stuff was going to be a thing. Creatives have been kind of saying no end times for a long time, yet still holding out hope. IP has always been a weird thing when it comes to Warhammer because Games Workshop can pick and choose what is still in the IP and what isn't, or what has actually changed. Like, for example, recently with Mother of Stanker being the only Hag Mother, so that's why we'd only have one Hag Lord, which is the Legendary Lord. Now, it's important to note that we have had other stuff from other IPs in the past. Arkan the Black, for example, looks like his End Times model. Elfar in the Grim has some unique units that were exclusive to the End Times, but were really just reskins and recolors. The Slaanesh Demons are actually updated from Age of Sigmar, but one thing that's very important to note is that these are just visual updates, so they're not actually new things. These have existed in the past, they're just using the new visuals because it helps with selling the models for Games Workshop, and let's be honest, they're also much better. Skarr Bloodwrath, on the other hand, was introduced during the End Times. He is an End Times character that has since made his way to Age of Sigmar like a few others. But yes, he is from a separate IP, and this is great news. A lot of people do like Skarr Bloodwrath. I, personally, am not keen on the fact that he's a legendary hero, especially as Sylar is supposed to be a member of his tribe. This is lore that actually changed during the End Times itself, and it's supposed to be like the most recent canon, so a lot of people are supposed to see that as canon now, rather than Sylar being from a Norscan tribe. He should have been a lord, but yeah, Creative Assembly have decided, or maybe Games Workshop have decided for them. It does kind of confuse me, because it kind of hints that we might be seeing the Wrathmongers and the Skull Reapers, so I kind of find it a little bit weird that he's going to be a hero, yet his specific units are going to show up, and he's not going to be able to lead them per se. But let's not get into the negative point of view. This stuff is still very important, because if the End Times is now going to be a thing, if we're able to see content from this specific IP, that means that other exclusives from the End Times are going to be possible. The Glotkin, which is a character that well, 3 characters actually, but 1 model that a lot of people have been waiting for, is something that came out during the End Times. The Putrid Blight Kings also are End Times exclusive. Keep in mind when I'm saying End Times exclusive, I mean to the Warhammer fantasy setting, not Age of Sigmar, as they're also there too. The Storm Fiends were something that were introduced during the End Times also, and I know a lot of people do want them from the Skaven. Vanquil and Bone Ripper were always confirmed, and it was likely that they were going to use the newer model. Nagash is something that we're expecting down the line, and he was always going to use the newer model, but the Morghast were introduced during the End Times, so it would be nice to see those implemented in-game. Essentially, yesterday's news made me very hopeful for the future of this franchise, because if Games Workshop are now allowing the End Times, if what we're made to believe originally was actually the case, there could be a slither of hope that other stuff attached to Warhammer Fantasy might be used more often. In said interview, I believe it was Mitch who said, yeah, we have the books and so on, and then we have other sources like the magazines and so on, which might mean that the IP might be a little bit more relaxed to be able to make more content and therefore more DLCs. There were a few rumors every now and then that there might be like 2 or 3 DLCs left, which seems to kind of line up a little bit, but might be extended. The rumors were like the Khorne DLC, Dogs of War, Big End Times DLC, which I kind of went like, oh, this doesn't sound right, because End Times is supposed to be a separate IP, but now is attached. I'm not saying take stuff from Age of Sigmar. I do believe that Games Workshop and Creative Assembly have likely flirted with the idea of an Age of Sigmar Total War in the future, because, it is its own thing. It's a bit more higher fantasy than Warhammer Fantasy, and yeah, we could potentially sell well if Games Workshop keep fleshing out the world as they've been doing now with the universe, actually, more than a world. But they have been attempting to flesh out the areas a lot more when it comes to the new launch, especially since we're getting more detailed maps of 4th edition. However, Warhammer the Old World exists, and that is attached to Warhammer Fantasy. Keep in mind, it's in the same setting, just a few years difference. 200 years, in fact. I know some people might say, well, that's a long time between the settings. Not really, because nothing's really changed in terms of units and so on, just the introduction of a few new ones. Like the Foot Knights in Warhammer the Old World, a lot of people have been wanting that for Brettonia. I'm starting to believe that with the introduction of the End Times, it is very possible, it's very possible, that Creative Assembly might be able to convince Games Workshop to allow some usage of Old World specific stuff. The Foot Knights would be great. There could be more units coming out in the future. I mean, there's technically new units, but just no new models, like, for example, the Chosen Knights and so on. But new models are expected for the future. They've said that a host of new stuff is coming for the Empire, apparently, so that's going to be kind of cool. And it's not like Games Workshop haven't been using Total War Warhammer to hype up the old world themselves. In the past, if you went on Games Workshop's website, before this new one came in, which is absolutely atrocious, it's a horrible website, by the way, but in the past, if you searched for Total War, yeah, you would be shown stuff that was from Total War. The Karl Franz model, which turned into a Free Guild General, and a few others. I mean, it's still possible now, but then you get flooded with, like, 40k stuff. Like I said, the website is awful. But they have been kind of lining up old world releases to that of the releases on Total War. It's very, very obvious if you look at the last DLC. The introduction of Thrones of Decay with the dwarf side, yeah, you know, we had a bunch of Slayers. The Goblin Hewer, we had the Doomseekers come back and so on, and those were in the game. I'm not sure if Creative Assembly and Games Workshop planned that, but it does seem very coincidental, and maybe too coincidental at that. But yes, we have to talk about the fact that these aren't new units. They were actually introduced a long time ago during the Storm of Chaos. So it's just a rehash when Warhammer the Old World just kind of releases a older model once again with new rules. But the new stuff, yeah, I mean, a lot of people would want that. And yeah, Creative Assembly have even said, we want to rework Brettonia again. Well, another new unit would be absolutely wonderful because they do lack proper frontline foot troopers, which would be great for defending walls, for sieges. You do get into a decent amount of sieges, and unfortunately, with most of your horsemen, yeah, you're not going to be defending them. Now, this might sound like a little bit of hopium, copium, whatever you want to call it, but we all kind of were worried about the future of Total War Warhammer when it came to Shadows of Change, and I think Creative Assembly were having those fears too. Those fears were squashed with Thrones of Decay, and it does look like it's made Creative Assembly a lot more confident. The fact that we're getting larger patches with actual content in them makes me think that Creative Assembly have gone, yep, this is the cash cow. We know what we have to do. We know what the people want. We have to do that. 5.2 made me really happy about the state of the game, and now that end time stuff is coming in, it makes me feel even more confident that we could start seeing more stuff and seeing the game actually last a lot longer than originally expected. Just imagine this down the line, whether you believe the rumors of Total War 40k or not. Imagine 40k, fantasy, and then a big historical like Medieval 3 running at the exact same time. We'd be in a really good time in terms of content, like what we used to be when we had Warhammer 2, Three Kingdoms, and Troy releasing content pretty much monthly. The thing with Warhammer 3 is that it felt it was getting close to an end, as content eventually is going to run dry. But if they are now going to be able to go from one IP to the next one, End Times adds in a little bit more. And if Creative Assembly can convince Games Workshop that also going into the old world IP as it's releasing newer stuff, well, that could make the game last a lot longer, and that I think is what ultimately we all want. With that being said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Yesterday's news reveal was really, really good. Honestly, all I want now is for them to confirm the last units for Khorne. It would be really nice, or whatever this mystery generic lord is, and I think I'll be really, really happy. I'm just really, really curious. I think I know what they're going to do. We'll have a video going to that theory at some point this week. It just feels good to feel that bug to make content again. But yeah, guys, have a great day, and I'll see you all again very, very soon.